Hey everybody and welcome back to Get On Board. This time with another Responding Jamey episode. But I have to admit something, I did not watch Jamey's video today. I watched the intro, then I stopped because I liked the topic so much. It's about his top 10 victory point games. And the intro was something about he responded himself to a video, I think from Shut Up and Sit Down, where somebody used to say like he doesn't like victory point in games in general. And I don't know why he said that. I suppose that Jamey really loves victory point games because I think in almost all of his games there are victory points, and I adore victory points. This is why I did not watch the video from Jamey, because I wanted to do my list, film it, and then compare it to his list without being spoiled what he has to offer. So he did a top 10, which means I can do a top 13 just to roll this intro here. So before we get started, 2 or 3 quick little things. Victory points. Without knowing what the issue with victory points itself is from this person who said that victory points suck in general. Victory points, I think, are artificial. That's a complaint that I hear a lot, and that's true. And they have to be artificial because there's no such thing in real life. If a game is about money, an economic game, having the most money at the end of the game, we all understand that. But not every game lends itself to having the most money at the end of the game. So there has to be some common ground, some unrealistic, artificial way to win a game when it's not a war game where one faction can win by defeating the others. So, of course, it's artificial, but I still think it can be thematic. And the way I did this, these are 13 types of games that I think do victory point counting, victory points in general, a little different. And it's just going to be like a little hint to what the game does. I don't want to spend hours of talking, although I could, about each and every one of those games. So let's just jump into. The first thing is Terraforming Mars. The cool thing about Terraforming Mars, and I think almost everyone watching knows this game from this point on, is this chaotic point scoring, point counting at the end of the game. You have, especially in a 2-player game, you have like 50 or 60 cards in front of you. Every one of this scores some points. No, well, not every one of those, but a lot of cards score points, so you have to skim through these. Then there are points from the cities on the board. There are special tokens on your cards, like I think there could be animals and flowers and other things that could give points on those certain cards. And the scoring takes like 10 to 15 minutes almost, but I like it. I like sometimes this chaoticness of counting those points, because it means that during the game it's hard to know who's winning, who's leading, and I kind of like this feeling of coming from behind, or even feeling to be in the lead, but you never know if someone's catching up. What do they have in their deck, in their displayed cards? Because it's too much to keep track of, and I kind of like that. Number 12 is a trick-taking game. It's called NYETI, with an exclamation point at the end. And in NYETI, the funny thing is that before the trick-taking happens, you get your cards for each round, and then there's a voting phase. In this voting phase, you can decide what you want not. So, for example, you can say who's going to not to be the first player. Then you put a token on there, and this player is definitely not going to be the star player for this round. But you also can vote for what is going to be the trump, or not the trump, I should say, what is not the super trump, and how many points each trick should not get. And the last thing that's not covered in each row is what's going to be determined for this round. For example, who's going to be the start player, but also how many points each trick gets. This is really hard for me to explain, especially in English. Well, points for each trick could be 1 point for each trick, but it also could be -2 for each trick that you get during the game or during this round. And so a lot can change just by you voting for this or that thing. And this gives the game a totally different dynamic through each round. And I kind of like that not every round feels the same. You have these little voting tokens with your face on it, and you're all cute animals in this game. So I really like when a game lets you yourself as a player decide what you can score for each round. And it gives you a little bit of flexibility and self-decision on what to score points for. I like that. Number 11 is Heaven and Ale. And this is another one that's really tough for me to explain to you because it's kind of a little convoluted. Basically, in this game, you are building like monasteries on a board, and you are collecting resources to brew beer. Basically, lots of different resources. And I'm not an expert in brewing beer, but basically in the end, it comes down to what resource you have the least of, and this is how many points you get. But before the game is over, you can trade resources, so you can lower your total of the resource that you have the most of and advance the resource that you have the least of so that it reaches, so to speak, a common ground. And this trading for resources in the end is really interesting because the amount that you can trade of each resource is denominated by some person that you moved on the board. It's really hard to explain, but the thing is that even if you don't advance one of those ingredients, one of those resources, you still could be doing pretty well just by being great in another resource. I know I'm not doing this game any justice here, but yeah, I think you really have to try it for yourself because I like the scoring method in this a lot. Heaven and Ale. Number 10 is another favorite of mine. It's Aura and Labora. And I really wanted to put Le Havre, or Le Havre? I think the French pronunciation is Le Havre. I wanted to put that on because I really like the Uwe Rosenberg games and the scoring methods in those. But Le Havre is only about who has the most money. And you could just say, okay, money are victory points in this game. But let's just exclude that. But in Aura and Labora, it's definitely victory points. And it has another upside because it's not only victory points from cards and from your engines that you build, but also there's a spatial aspect because where you put which cards in your village matters to some cards that want to be next to others. There's this neighboring factor that comes to some cards that you can build throughout the game, which is really interesting. So you have to plan, build like a settlement here, and if I build another very good building that's good for the community next to it later in the game, then I will score a lot of points in the future. And it's really a lot about planning, and I like the spatial puzzle that this game provides a lot. And also, I like if I think about it, the victory scoring things about this a lot more than I like the victory point things itself from Le Havre, for example. Then we come to number 9, a classic game. And where do I all those games? Well, number 9 is Seven Wonders, a super classic game. And by the way, I like games when they have a good score sheet. And let's just open this up because there are all the expansions. And here you see the score sheet. And I like when a game gives you a clear structure on how to score on a score sheet. And you can get a lot of different kinds of victory points in this game. You can get military points, which convert into victory points at the end of the game. You get points for money. You get points for every kind of those different card families that you collect throughout the game. But everyone scores in a different way. There's some sort of set collection going on. Then you have to plan ahead. So some cards in the end that will be distributed new in every game gives you point for certain other sets that you can maybe plan for, maybe not plan for. But even with the expansions, you get scoring cards. The leaders expansion, you get leader cards at the start of the game, which will give you a hint or like a strategy that you can plan for. For example, I don't know, being very good at military, so you don't only get the military points itself, but also your leader gives you another purpose for victory points, or military points, rather, I should say. And I really like that. Also, this could get families to into the, oh wow, there's more to it in board games than just being the richest. And I kind of like that. I had a lot of success teaching this to families, which is a cool thing, I think, getting more people into the hobby. So number 9, 7 Wonders. Number 8 is a super classic, and I think one of the most played games in the world because a lot of people in Asia play it. It's TICHU. TICHU is also a trick-taking game, like my number 12, NYETI was. But in this game, it's that in every game session, you have one partner who sits across of you. And this game can only be played with 4 players, but it's whoever reaches 1,000 victory points the first. And there are some cards in the deck that you try to collect, but the tricks are not always the same size. For example, you could have a multiple pairs or a straight or a flush or something like that. And then you have to kind of follow suit if you want to play your cards also. But the thing I like the most is that you can call it TICHU, which means that you think your hand of cards is so good that you will finish this game round first. And this is like kind of shoot to the moon. Your partner tries to support you in this round, but your 2 opponents, which are sitting right next to you, they try to destroy your game. So you don't finish first. Even if they give you a few points, you will lose more points if they make you finish second or third or so. And I kind of like this balance of you can shoot for the moon, trying to get a lot of points, but your points are not only created by you, but your team partner as well. And there are a lot of games which do that, and a lot of team versus team games is always about which team eliminates the other team, and that's not in this game because there's this partner victory scoring thing going on, and I like that. Number 7 is Carson City. This heavy big box here. And Carson City, basically everything is about money in this game until the end of the game. Then money is worth nothing because, or I shouldn't say nothing, but almost nothing. Because right from the start of the game, you earn money, you try to build a city, one city in the middle of the board. So every player builds in the same city, and your buildings create money, not victory points, money. So you earn a lot of money, but you can only take a fixed amount of money with you into the next round. And there are some worker placement spots which will let you convert money into victory points before the round ends, but they get less and less exciting throughout the game. So at the beginning of the game, you can, I think, exchange 2 money for 1 victory point. And at the end of the game, I think it's just 6 money. $6 is 1 victory point. So it gets less and less efficient to earn money. And you really have to find the perfect spot when to switch your engine over from money to victory points. And I kind of like that when a game, it's kind of victory points, 1 unit of things, but it's not really victory points. There's a return rate that shifts throughout the game. And I really like that. And there are also not a lot of games that do that well, I guess. And Carson City is a game that does it very well, I think, for me. Number 6 is Riverboat. Riverboat is a Michael KIESLIND game, which is, I think, super balanced for me, because you can almost decide everything. You decide in which phase you start, which phase you want to be the star player in, and you can decide which scoring tiles do you want to get, and also when to activate them. So for example, you are building those fields of different resources, and you can decide when do you want to activate the scoring tile, placing a worker on it, and when to get points for your, I don't know, pumpkin fields. So you really plan, and in 2 rounds from now, I have enough pumpkin fields connected that I will earn a lot of points. But you can decide when to do that and which cards you want to get that score you points for, I don't know what. And there are a lot of cards, and not every card will come out in each game. And also, each scoring card that you get in the game gives you an immediate bonus as well. So you don't only get an end time or an end game bonus or a scoring bonus, which is somewhere down the road in the game, but also an immediate bonus when you purchase the card. And also, there's another track where you advance your Harbor Master, and depending on how much he went down the Harbor Master road or the Harbor Master track, you can score a lot of points as well. But I never have the feeling of having this much control about my scoring opportunities as in this game, and I really like that it's super balanced for me and super fair. It just seems to be super fair, and I like that. Number 5, breaking into the top 5, and I promise you I didn't put that on the list because it's a responding Jamey video, and we have a hard time even pulling it in front of the camera. Wow! And there goes number 3 and 2. It's Scythe, and I won't turn this box because I think it will create a big mess. The thing about a scythe is, and let's just put it here on the side so you can watch the beautiful artwork on the side of the cover. The cool thing about Scythe is that the scoring at the end of the game is well integrated into the theme of the game. During the game, you can have certain encounters where you can decide what you want to do. Do you want to, if there comes a man to you that asks you, can you defend me of those mechs that are destroying my fields? And you can say, sure, I can do that. Maybe you get some food for it and some renown, so you rise on this popularity track, which is really important at the end of the game. I will come to that in a minute. But you can also say, no, forget it, I won't help you. I just take the mech instead, and I won't help you. And you have these encounter cards where you have always 3 possibilities that you can do. I really like that you have the chance to immerse yourself into the world of the character, which I find super cool. And Scythe is not the uber thematic game for me. I love the game, don't get me wrong, but the encounter cards make it more thematic for me. And when the game ends, and the game it's a race most of the times, when the race for getting your parts that will end the game out, when the race is over, then the final scoring happens. And the player who ended the game has an advantage, but it's definitely not clear that he will win. Because after that, how high you are on your popularity track determines how much points you get for certain things. And I know that money are victory points in the game, but I still think, because you get a lot of points or money for other things, for controlling certain areas on the board, for collecting resources, having resources collected during the game. And how high you are on your popularity track determines how much points you get for certain things. This might a little bit cheating because it's still money, basically, but because the money, you don't always spend it like money, like for example in Carson City, I think it still counts for this list. And I think I know that Jamey wouldn't put it on his list because it's one of his games. And I really like the scoring mechanisms and the victory point conditions in this game a lot. So let's come to number 4. Number 4, and it just slipped when I tried to take Scythe. Number 4 is Concordia, a brilliant game. And I think it's the most streamlined victory point system that it's in on my entire list. Because in Concordia, it's not a deck building game, but it's a hand building game where you build a hand. And it's a super streamlined game because all you do on your turn is play one card, do what it says, next player's turn. But every card has a little family on the bottom, and every family scores in a different way. For example, one family says you score for every district that you're in, and one family of cards say you score for every person that you have on the board. And so you can get multiple copies, so you can hunt for a certain family, so you can buy and add new cards to your hand. So you have a lot of cards from the family that will give you points for being in this district, and you can really focus on getting more people in this district, so you can multiply your points with the cards of your family. I hope this makes sense, but if you play it, it's really simple, really streamlined, and still gives you this flexibility and the self-decisions that you make of what you want to score points for, what you want to specialize yourself in, which I'm looking for in a game. And this does it in a very different way, and also streamlined because the card is your action card and your scoring card at the same time, which is super cool. Number 3, and number 3 might be the odd one out because I cannot describe you why I like the scoring, the victory point scoring in this game. Only that I love a game that will give you a lot of points. In this game, you get like 300, 400, 500 points, and I'm talking about Russian railroads. And there are, of course, there are a lot of things that you can do in this game, but basically it comes down to 2 main strategies, 2 main areas where you get your points from. It's technology and building tracks, but it's super balanced. You can do a little bit of both and be good. You can specialize in the tracks or in the technology and still win, because I had games where I think we almost tied. I think one had 450 and the other player had 452 points. And having this many points, I think there's a danger of it not being balanced. And then you can say, I don't know, like for example, no, you could just cut 1 decimal and then it would be 45 to 40. But in this game you couldn't. And yeah, I'm just rambling here, but I just like the game. I like getting a lots of points, and it's also like this exponential growth. So in your first round you get like 6 points, and then the second round you get 18 points, and in the third round you get 78 points at the end of the round. And I kind of like this ramping up, this exponential growth of your mechanism, not your mechanism, but your track building, or your engine gets bigger and bigger and better, and you build these tracks, and it's super satisfying to get those points. Although it's not necessarily that the game is super new when it comes to victory points or super innovative, but I still like it a lot. Let's push it a little further away, because now we come to number 2. Number 2, and I really wanted to have a deck builder on the game. I had like kind of a deck builder with Concordia, but it's not really a deck builder. It's more like a hand management, hand building game. And by far my favorite deck building game, I think in general, and also when it comes to scoring, is Clank in Space. In deck building games in general, I like that your whole deck, most of the time, gives you points. So at the end of the game, you take all your cards, no matter where they are, in your discard pile, on your hand, or on your draw pile. And then you skim through them, see which cards gives you points, which ones does not. But in this game, it's all about, well, it's just the cards are secondary, because you are trying to get in the Clank in Space version, you're trying to get into the bad guy's spaceship, get in there, steal something from him, which will give you a lot of victory points, some artifact, get out, take the escape pod, and be done with it. And it's kind of like a race, because there are a lot of artifacts on the spaceship, and whoever gets one can rush out, and the other players might get stuck inside of the bad guy's spaceship, and they might not even score. It's a small possibility, and it's super balanced, and it's not that it's like player eliminating, but I really like the danger of going deeper into the spaceship, having this kind of, oh boy, well, the other player is very near to an artifact. He might catch it, might only get a 5-point artifact, and I'm super close to getting the 40-point artifact, but I'm super deep into the spaceship, so if he rushes back, I might not get out in time. But I have so many point cards in my deck that I run not that fast, but I get a lot of points if I score. And I like this, that you have those different avenues that you can pursue, like pumping up your deck, getting a big artifact, getting a small artifact. And it's super thematic for me. And it's, for me, personally, it's super hard to do a well-integrated thematic deck building game. That's just the way it is for me. I don't necessarily enjoy deck building games that much, but I very much enjoy Clank in Space. And I love the victory point system and the scoring system in this one. Let's come to number 1. Number 1 is a small game, Fantasy Realms. And it's a game that I played a lot of. When I was to the United States for at the end of last year, beginning of this year, I think we played this almost every day, 3 or 4 times in a row. Always 2 or 3 players, but it's a super fast game. It's like one round could take between 5 and 10 minutes, and then it's like 2 or 3 minutes of scoring, which, by the way, the app really helps you with, because you can just put all the cards into the app, like tell the app which cards are in your hands, and then the app will tell you how many points you did, and you not have to count them up on this score sheet, this handy dandy score sheet, because basically all that you are doing is getting 7 cards in your hand, but finding this right combinations of cards, because let's start this over. Because every card depends on one or several other cards. There are cards that will grant you points for having odd cards in your hand, having a straight in your hand, but certain cards of certain families in your hand might get blanked, so they don't count at all. The point scoring can be ridiculous, because one card could give you 150 points, but another card will only give you 2 points. But the 2-point card might have a better ability, or you might need it for the straight. And only with 7 cards in your hand, every card is different in the game. It creates this feeling of, I built the perfect hand. Well, not the perfect hand necessarily of this rather medium-sized deck, but for this game, this is the best that I could do. It is a little depending on the luck of the draw, which you can always have when it comes to card games, of course. But I still think that it's super balanced, because with those, I don't know how many are there, like 40, 50 cards, I rarely see the same combination twice. And the cards are so well connected with each other. The families of the cards are not very thematic, but if you play the game over and over again, you kind of recognize what the game system and the thematic integration tries to tell you. For example, the artifacts are not that powerful of point cards. They rather give you fewer victory points, but the artifacts give you bonuses for other cards. And like leaders are cool, but some leaders require like armies or lands, so that they are really good, or like really, really good. And I like this crazy system of how many points do you have? I have like 220 points. How many do you have with your 7 cards? Well, I don't know, because, well, the queen and the king together, they like each other together, and they give you like 40 points for each army card in your hand. And there are so many, like I think millions of combinations that you could have. And some of the time it's really like mind-boggling. Oh, how do I combine this? And which card do I discard? Does this give me more points, or this give me more points? And I love the victory point counting of this game. It's tricky, and it's deceivingly easy at first, but it's super hard to be good at, I think. And this is why this is my number 1, because it's a lot of depth in a very small game. You can almost play it everywhere. We played it on the beach and in a restaurant, just waiting for dinner. And it's I love this game, Fantasy Realms. And at first, the players I taught it, they were like hesitant, like, okay. And after the first round, they say, okay, let's play it again. I might be better. And the next one, okay, let's do it again. I get I kind of get the idea of what the game is trying to do. And then we played on and on and on, even forgetting about dinner. And of course, this is the sign of a very, very good game, and a very interesting one as well. So what do you think of my list? What did I miss? Do you disagree with some of my choices, or some of the victory point giving choices that I did? I tried to skim through my collection in a way of which game do victory points going differently, because I think every one of those 13 games does it in a kind of unique way. And maybe you have something to add. And now I'm super pumped to watch Jamey's list and see and compare our lists. So him from a designer's perspective and me just from a player's perspective. And this is what I will do now. I hope you enjoyed the video. So see you next time on Responding Jamey. Bye.